He wasn't expecting anyone special to show up. But when the man in sunglasses began clapping, everyone froze. It was a small-town high school, the kind with creaky floors, faded trophy cases, and a gymnasium that doubled as an auditorium. The kind of place where everybody knew everybody, and the talent show was one of the biggest nights of the year. That year, one name was whispered more than any other: Danny Carson. Danny wasn't the kind of kid you'd expect to grab the spotlight. He was quiet, kept to himself, wore hand-me-down jeans, and often had his nose buried in old music magazines. But if you walked past the music room during lunch, you'd sometimes hear something strange, a voice, deep, smooth, hauntingly familiar. It wasn't long before the rumor spread. "Have you heard Danny? He sounds just like Elvis Presley." Most brushed it off. A teenager sounding like the king of rock and roll? Impossible. But those who had actually heard him sing, those who paused outside the music room or caught him humming between classes, knew it wasn't just a rumor. It was real. Danny had been practicing for weeks in secret. He idolized Elvis, watched every old video he could find, memorized every movement, every inflection, every lyric, not because he wanted attention, but because Elvis made him feel something, like he wasn't invisible. The night of the show, the gym was packed. Folding chairs squeaked as people shifted in their seats. Teachers, parents, classmates, everyone was there. Danny stood backstage, dressed in a thrift store white jacket he'd tried to make look like Elvis' iconic jumpsuit. His hands trembled, but not from fear, from hope. He had no idea that someone very unexpected was sitting in the back row. And that what started as a tribute was about to become something unforgettable. The MC called his name. Up next, Danny Carson performing "Can't Help Falling in Love." The crowd clapped politely. A few students giggled. Some parents leaned back, expecting an awkward teenage rendition. Nobody expected much. But then Danny stepped into the spotlight. He held the mic with both hands like it was fragile. For a second, he looked frozen. Then, he closed his eyes and took a breath. The first note fell like a whisper. Wise men say, only fools rush in. The room fell silent. There was something different in his voice. It wasn't just that he hit the notes. It wasn't just the tone or the timing. It was how he sang, like the words weren't lyrics but memories, like he meant every single one. The audience leaned in. One by one, phones were lowered, conversations stopped, even the teachers sat up straighter. Halfway through the song, something magical happened. You could see it. The shy kid everyone thought they knew disappeared. In his place stood someone else. Confident, smooth, like he belonged there, like he'd been waiting his whole life for this moment. And then came the final line. "But I can't help falling in love with you." As the last note echoed through the gym, a second of pure silence followed. No clapping, no cheering, just stunned silence. And then thunder. The applause hit like a wave. People stood up, cheered, shouted. Even those who had rolled their eyes before were now clapping like crazy. But in the back row, one man wasn't clapping. He was smiling. Older, sunglasses indoors, quiet. He stood slowly, and with a nod of approval, he began to clap. Danny didn't recognize him at first, but the people sitting nearby did. And whispers began to spread like wildfire. "Wait, is that Elvis Presley's manager?" "No, it can't be. That's not just someone, that's someone who knew Elvis." And Danny? He was about to meet the man who'd bring him closer to the king than he'd ever dreamed. The auditorium was packed. You could feel the tension in the air as Tyler stepped off the stage, sweat still glistening on his forehead. He took a deep breath, trying to calm his racing heart. He had done it. He had sung his tribute to Elvis, poured his soul into the performance, and the crowd's applause had made it all feel worthwhile. But just as he was catching his breath backstage, the unexpected happened. A quiet ripple moved through the audience, almost like a wave of disbelief. People began turning their heads, whispering. At first, no one understood what was going on. Then, someone near the entrance stood up, pointing with wide eyes. A moment later, the principal's voice broke through the chatter on the mic. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a very special guest joining us tonight." And that's when the doors opened. Slowly, a man in a sharp, vintage-style suit walked in. Hair slicked back, sunglasses on, moving with that unmistakable cool swagger. For a second, people thought it was an impersonator, some elaborate joke or school stunt. But then a few gasps escaped. The man stepped closer, nodding at the students and staff. His face came into full view under the stage lights. It was him, Elvis Presley, or at least someone who looked exactly like him. Tyler's jaw dropped. He froze in place, unsure whether to smile, run, or hide. This had to be a dream. Elvis, his idol, was walking toward the stage. And then it happened. Elvis looked right at Tyler, smiled, and gave him a standing ovation. Just him. No one else clapped at first because they were still too stunned. But then the room exploded with cheers. Students, parents, and teachers jumped to their feet, clapping wildly. Tyler stood frozen in awe, overwhelmed by the moment. Elvis walked up to him, extended his hand, and said something Tyler would never forget. "You've got heart, kid, and that voice, it's got soul." That one line changed everything. Tyler felt like the world had stopped spinning. The roar of the audience faded into a soft hum as he looked into the eyes of the man he had idolized for years. It was one thing to sing like Elvis. It was something else entirely to be recognized by him. Still trying to find his voice, Tyler managed a shaky, "Thank you." Elvis gave him a warm smile, the kind that cuts through nerves and doubt like sunlight through clouds. He turned to the audience, took the mic, and said, "Now that's how you do the king proud." The crowd cheered again, louder this time, as Elvis gently patted Tyler's shoulder and stepped aside, letting the moment belong entirely to the young performer. Tyler wasn't just the kid who dressed up and tried to sing like a legend anymore. He had just been given the ultimate seal of approval. After the show, people rushed backstage. Some wanted to shake Tyler's hand, others wanted to know if that had really been Elvis Presley. Phones were out, videos were being shared. It didn't take long before clips of the performance and Elvis's appearance hit the internet. Within hours, it went viral. "Teen brings Elvis back to life at school talent show," one headline read. Another said, "The king shows up to applaud his newest fan." Social media exploded. Some thought it was a clever deepfake or look-alike stunt. Others swore it was real. But Tyler didn't care what people believed. He knew what he saw, he knew what he felt. The next morning, he woke up to hundreds of messages, local news requests, even emails from record producers. People wanted to hear more from the boy who sang like Elvis and brought an entire room to tears. And yet Tyler stayed grounded. He didn't rush to sign any deals. Instead, he sat down with his guitar, took a deep breath, and smiled. Because he knew something most people only dream of, that once in a lifetime, the universe might just open a door, and when you walk through it with heart and honesty, the king himself might be waiting on the other side to say, "You've got it." And that's a moment no fame or fortune could ever replace. The lights dimmed slightly in the school gymnasium, a room that had never known more than basketball games and PTA meetings. But tonight it was transformed. The makeshift stage was draped in red and gold streamers. Foldable chairs lined the waxed floor, filled with proud parents, teachers, and curious students, all buzzing with excitement. This was the annual high school talent show, and for most, it was just another evening of karaoke, magic tricks, and dance routines. But not for Danny. Backstage, Danny adjusted the collar of his white jumpsuit. It wasn't perfect. The rhinestones were glued on by his sister, and the belt was borrowed from his dad's old Halloween costume. Still, to him, it was sacred. It was his tribute, his moment to bring Elvis back to life, if only for a few minutes. He had rehearsed for weeks, sometimes singing until his voice cracked, mimicking every shake of the hips, every finger snap, every twang in the voice. But now, as the host called his name, Danny felt his legs tremble. Next up, Danny Carter performing an Elvis Presley classic. The spotlight hit him like a wave. The gym was suddenly silent. Danny stepped onto the stage, gripping the mic like it was the last lifeline he had. He took a deep breath. Then the music started, a slow, rolling intro to "Can't Help Falling in Love." As he opened his mouth and began to sing, the crowd leaned in. Not because they were expecting brilliance, but because something about this teenager, his voice, his poise, the way he stood, was different. He didn't just sound like Elvis, he felt like Elvis. Mothers in the front row gasped softly. A teacher dropped her clipboard. Students who had been half distracted were suddenly glued to their seats. By the time he hit the second verse, people were exchanging looks. Some were smiling with disbelief. Others mouthed to each other, "Is this real?" Then came the moment that would be remembered for years. A voice from the back yelled, "That's the king, baby." Laughter broke out, but it wasn't mocking. It was celebratory, a release of tension, an acknowledgement that something magical was happening. Danny smiled mid-song, but he didn't break character. He finished the song with the same soul he started with. As the final note echoed, there was a pause. Then an eruption of applause, not the polite clapping most performers received. This was thunderous. People stood up, cheered, whistled, some even wiped away tears. Danny bowed, not a shy schoolboy bow. A deep Elvis-style bow with one arm across his waist and the other extended to the crowd. Backstage, a student whispered to the drama teacher, "That was legendary." But no one, not even Danny, could predict what would happen next. As the cheering continued, Danny made his way off stage, his heart pounding harder than ever before. He couldn't believe it, they actually loved it. For weeks he had battled self-doubt, laughter behind his back, even a few cruel jokes in the hallway. But now, in this moment, none of that mattered. The applause wrapped around him like a warm coat on a cold night. And then it happened. A man stood up near the back of the gym, clapping slowly, rhythmically, and with a familiarity that made people turn. He wore a dark suit, a pair of tinted glasses, and oddly a velvet scarf tucked into his collar. His sideburns were unmistakable. His hair jet black, styled in the exact fashion people had seen 1,000 times before. The gym fell into a hushed whisper. "Wait, is that? No way. Dude, that guy looks like Elvis." Danny, still catching his breath, turned toward the voice. He squinted through the stage lights. The man wasn't moving forward, just standing there, applauding, smiling. The host, clearly flustered, took the mic. "Ladies and gentlemen, it seems we have a very special guest in the audience tonight." The crowd parted slightly as the man stepped forward. Every eye was on him. Danny's heart skipped. Was this a prank, a look-alike, some kind of weird coincidence? But then the man spoke, and that voice, that deep southern drawl, smooth and slow, hit everyone like a bolt of lightning. "That boy," he said, pointing toward Danny, "just reminded me why music matters." There was a silence, deep and reverent, the kind of silence that demands respect. Danny blinked, his knees nearly gave out. The man chuckled, "Don't worry, son, I'm not a ghost." The audience laughed nervously. "I used to sing those songs on stages like this," he continued, walking toward Danny. "And tonight I heard them again, not as echoes of the past, but through your voice." By now the entire crowd was on their feet. Phones were recording, some people were crying. Danny's mom, standing near the side wall, had her hand over her heart. The man reached out and shook Danny's hand. "You've got the spirit, kid, don't lose it." Danny tried to speak but couldn't. All he could do was nod, still lost in the surreal blur of the moment. As the man walked back to his seat, someone shouted, "Long live the king." And the crowd answered with a roar. Danny didn't know whether he had just met Elvis himself or the best impersonator in the world. But either way, the experience was burned into his soul forever. He hadn't just sung a song, he had summoned a legend. And somehow the legend had answered. As the final notes of "Can't Help Falling in Love" floated through the gym, the boy stood still, trembling ever so slightly, holding that microphone like it had just transported him through time. His voice had cracked once, but not in a way that ruined the moment. No, it made it more human, more honest, more Elvis. For a second, everything fell silent. You could hear the hum of the school's old ceiling fans. No applause, no cheers, just stunned silence. And then one slow clap. It started from the back of the room, from a man wearing sunglasses indoors and a coat that didn't match the season. Clap, clap, clap. People turned around, confused, and then gasps filled the air. Because there he was. Elvis Presley, or someone who looked exactly like him. He stood tall, clapping with a wide grin, as if he had just watched a younger version of himself discover something sacred. The room exploded into cheers. Phones came out, kids screamed, but the boy, he froze. He didn't know whether to laugh, cry, or faint. The man in the back kept clapping as he slowly walked forward, step by step, each clap echoing like approval from a legend. The boy's knees nearly gave out as Elvis, or this Elvis look-alike, reached the stage. And then the unexpected happened. The man took off his sunglasses. Beneath them were kind eyes, too familiar. A teacher gasped. A janitor whispered something no one could quite hear. Could it really be? No one could say for sure. Was this an impersonator, a long-lost relative, a retired Elvis tribute artist with impeccable timing? Or had something stranger just happened? The man reached the stage, extended a hand, and said loud enough for everyone to hear, You didn't just sing like the king. Tonight, son, you were the king." The gym went wild. The boy, overwhelmed, shook his hand. The energy in that room was electric. No longer a school auditorium, but a concert hall charged with history, dreams, and something close to magic. After the show, the man vanished just as mysteriously as he appeared. Some said he was a professional Elvis tribute artist who had heard about the performance through a friend. Others whispered that he was a cousin, but a few believed in something else entirely. A few believed that maybe, just maybe, Elvis never truly left the building. And for one night in one small-town school gym, the spirit of Elvis returned, not to perform, but to pass the torch. If this story touched your heart even a little, hit that like button and share it with someone who still believes in magic. Elvis may be gone, but his spirit lives on, in every voice that dares to sing with soul. Drop a comment below. What would you have done if Elvis walked into your school? And if you want more real stories with a twist of wonder, mystery, and music, subscribe. Because around here, legends never die. They just show up when you least expect them.